So satisfying. Hey everyone, today on this episode of Newegg Now, I'm going to be building a work from home PC. Shout out to Cooler Master for sending me some great products that you see here. Everything else you see that isn't Cooler Master branded was purchased by yours truly. That being said, whether I receive the item or purchase it myself, any opinion expressed is strictly my own. If you're interested in anything you see here, the links to them will be in the video description. Now let's go ahead, let's look at the build. So you can see all the parts are readily available on Newegg, and our build came in right at around $1,100. You can see a nice breakdown right here of all the parts and components that we're going to use for this build. Feel free to swap parts in or out depending on your budget. But what's nice about this build is we're using the Ryzen 5 5600G, so we do not need to buy a GPU because that alone would be the cost of this build with the current market conditions. So you can see our RAM G.Skill Trident Z RGB. We have 32 gigs total, two 16 gig sticks. The Ryzen 5 5600G. We're using the Asus ROG Strix B550i gaming motherboard for our AMD CPU. Then we have a Lexar 1 terabyte M.2 drive. It's Gen 3. There are Gen 4 drives available if you want even faster speeds. Then we're using the Cooler Master Masterbox NR200P in Sunset Orange. There are multiple color options available, and you can choose to get one with or without the tempered glass panel. I'm planning on using the tempered glass panel in this build. Then you can see our SFX fully modular power supply right here, 650 watts. Overkill for what we need, but we have room to expand if we ever want to add a GPU in the future. Then you can see the air cooler we're going to use with RGB. Some additional accessories we may or may not need. We'll find that out once we get into the build. And then you can see we have some fans we're going to add as well. Again, you can swap that in or out depending on your budget and what you're after. So that being said, everything we have right here coming in right around $1,100. Here are all the parts and components that we're going to be using in this build. So first up, we have our Lexar 1 terabyte M.2 drive. We have our Trident Z RGB from G.Skill, 32 gigs total. We have our AMD Ryzen 5 5600G. So it has an integrated graphics. We are not using a GPU with this build. Next, you can see our beautiful Asus motherboard right here. So really small and compact, really excited for that. Then we have our Cooler Master air cooler, low profile, nice and small for this build. Then you can see we have the bracket for it. We have our 1 to 5 splitter cable for all of our RGB fans and components. Then you can see we have our 650 watt, fully modular, 80 plus gold power supply right here from Cooler Master. Fantastic choice. And all the cables we're going to use for this build. Then you can see we have two addressable RGB 120 millimeter fans, as well as the two fans that come with the case that we're going to use. I'm most excited about this case. It is fantastic. This is the Sunset Orange color, but it is available in 6 color options. Very easy to work with, and it looks so good. So we're going to end up swapping out the panel on this side that you guys see for the tempered glass panel. We'll put that on at the end of the build once it's finished. But it's a really nice, good looking case. Tons of options. We can even do liquid cooling out of this if we want to install a pump, and we can mount our GPU vertically. So now, after looking at all the parts and components, let's go ahead, let's get this thing built. So the first thing we're gonna do is prep our motherboard and get it all set up and ready to go. So we're gonna install the M.2 drive, our CPU, our RAM, and our bracket for our cooler. So let's go ahead, let's do that right now. So to get the M.2 drive installed, we need to remove the heatsink. So let's go ahead, let's just gently remove it right here. So we have 2 screws to take off. There's the first one. Here's the second one. And now you can see we have the heatsink removed and we have our thermal pad on there. Now we're ready to go ahead and take our drive, make sure everything's lined up, and then we're going to install it right in place. So you can see we already have a screw ready for us, or your drive will come with one you can use. And if you need to reposition that standoff bracket, feel free to do that. But you basically just line it up at a 45-degree angle and then you press it in place, and you can see we're going to have to just gently press it back down to get it installed on our motherboard. Depending on the board that you're using, you may have multiple slots, and you can see on this particular board, we can actually add another drive right here on the backside, and you can see we have spots for our standoff brackets again. So now we just need to go ahead and put the heatsink cover back on. So you can see we got the heatsink tightened down again, and now our M.2 drive has successfully been installed. Now we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get the CPU installed. So we're gonna take this lever right here, we're gonna pull it up, and now we're ready to take our CPU, and we're gonna look for that gold corner right there, and we're gonna match it onto the board where this little triangle is. So that's what we're gonna do to gently put it in place. So you'll see it'll just drop right in. You won't have to force anything, and just line up that triangle with the little triangle in the corner right there. And then we just gently press it back down. And now you can see we have our CPU installed. Now we're gonna prep the board by removing the default bracket right here. So you can see what we have installed on this board and what we're gonna put there instead. So let's go ahead, let's do that right now. We're gonna take our Phillips head screwdriver and just remove those 4 screws. So now you can see what it looks like with the default AMD bracket removed right here. And you can see we have our coolers bracket. We're just gonna slide that right up in place, and you can see it's a perfect fit. So now when it's time to install the cooler, we'll be able to do that very easily. Now we're ready to install our RAM. You can see we have 2 slots here. The RAM's only gonna go one way, so make sure you have the correct pin alignment. Then just gently line everything up and then press it in place. You'll hear it click and snap. So there we go. We got the first one installed. Now we'll do the exact same thing again with the other channel. Line it up, gently press in place. You can see, there we go. It just clicked right in, and now the RAM has been installed. Now we're ready to install the cooler. So go ahead. You can see we already have pre-applied thermal paste with this cooler, which is nice. And we're ready just to drop it right in. So again, we put the bracket there. You can see it's only gonna go one way. So if you try to do it this way, you'll notice, hey, those screws aren't gonna line up. So we can only do it one way. And then make sure at this stage for your cable management, I would recommend doing it with the cables as close over here as possible. So you can see that's how we're gonna drop it up to line it in place. So that's what we're gonna do right here. We're just gonna go ahead, gently put it on, run those cables just like so. So just line it up, rest the screws in place, just like you see here on the bracket, and now take a Phillips head screwdriver and tighten all 4 of them down in place. So here we go. You can see what the cooler looks like fully installed. At this step 2, when you're tightening the 4 screws in place, be sure just to give each one a 1/4 of a turn or so and rotate before you just tighten one all the way down. Be sure to just spend some time giving each one a couple of turns as you move around, and then you can tighten them all down. Don't just tighten one all the way down and move on to the next one. Spread out your tightening and make sure that it's all going down flush together. Also, now you're ready to plug in your CPU fan, which you can see we did that right there. I'm gonna leave the RGB unplugged right now because we'll be connecting more RGB to our header right there, and we'll be using a splitter cable. But there you go. You can see we have the cooler successfully installed. So now we're ready to prep the case. You can see I got all the panels removed. We can also remove that front panel if we needed to. In this case, we're gonna leave the power supply bracket right where it is, but if we wanted to, we could rotate it and mount it right here. That being said, we're gonna take the 2 included fans, and you can see we're gonna press them right in place. So very easy install right here. Just press it in, and we do that for all 4 of them. So you can see 1's in, 2, 3, and 4. Pay attention to how I have the cables run right here. So since this is gonna go on like this up top, I wanted those cables for the fans to be running down the backside so I can tuck them in and manage them a little bit easier. So there we go. We have 2 of our exhaust fans already installed. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take the 2 additional ARGB fans. We're gonna install them on the bottom right here, pulling in some air for us. So next up, let's go ahead, let's prep the power supply. So for this step, we need to go ahead and take off this bracket right here. So you can see we have 2 screws that we have to undo on this side. Once you take those screws off, you can see then the bracket will just fall down right here, and it's still being secured by these 2 Velcro straps. So let's go ahead, let's remove those and take it out. So there we go, we got it removed, and now we're ready to attach it to our power supply. So we're gonna want it to go just like this. And then we can look in there and you can see the holes will line up. So we'll be able to put a couple of different screws in to secure this bracket in place. So then we can mount it right back up in the case. So there you go. You can see we used 4 screws that were included with the power supply to put the bracket on. It fits great, looks really nice. We can see that from all different sides and angles. Now we're ready to reattach this to the case. So here it is fastened back to the case with the 2 included screws. And there we go. You can see we have the power supply unit successfully installed. Now we went ahead, we removed the bottom piece. So you can see we have 1 screw to remove the panel right here. And then it just pops right off. And we're ready to install the 2 120 millimeter fans. So you can see what this is going to look like right here. So we're going to flip this around. Those are going to go on the inside. We're going to line up the holes just how we want it and take the 4 screws for each fan that are included with the fans and fasten them in place. So here you go. You can see I got the fans installed here exactly how I want them. Also, I want to point out, if you're not happy with the adjustment by default of the toggle switch for high, medium, or low, be sure to configure that before you tighten them in place. But you can see it from both sides right here. I purposely have the cables on this side too. So again, when we put it back in the case, they're going to be away from the tempered glass and we can try to clean them up a little bit better. But now that this is installed, we're all set and ready to go to put it back on our case. So there we go. The screws fastened securely. It's snapped back in place. We can see it from the bottom right here, and then you can see it from the inside and the top-down view now and where our RGB fans are going to be. So check that out. It's going to look great illuminating right there below the motherboard and the power supply. Now we went ahead and connected all the power supply cables that we're going to need. So you can see we got our main motherboard connector right there and our CPU power as well. Looking at the top of it, you can see how we connected the included power cable in at the top right there. I also went ahead and I tucked in a PCIe cable down here for future reference in case we ever want to add a GPU. Since this build is going to be using an integrated GPU, I tend to lose cables and misplace them, so it's nice just to sneak it right in there and nobody will notice. So at this step, I'm actually going to call an audible right here. I feel like this is too many fans for the build, and I'm not worried about the thermals with this case. Even with the tempered glass on, we'll still have the vented side panel in the back, and from the bottom, I feel like it's going to be able to naturally just pull in air, cool air from the bottom. So we're going to swap the 2 fans that I installed on the bottom with the 2 fans that I installed on the top of the case. And then these 2 fans that were included, I'm just not going to use them in the build. So here we go. The fan swap is complete. So now it's time to get the motherboard installed. You can see we have our IO shield already snapped in place on the back of the case. You just bring it in right here, line it up, and gently press it in. Now we're ready to drop the motherboard in. So you can see we have 4 standoff brackets. You may need to pull these out of the way to give you enough space. And just gently line everything up so the Wi-Fi antennas can come in, the USBs, everything we have back there. There we go. Now you should see that it's fully seated and we're ready to fasten it in place with 4 screws. So you should have 12 of these screws included in your kit, and then we'll just drop them right in place and tighten them down. So now you can see we have successfully installed the motherboard and fastened it down. Now that our motherboard's installed, we're ready to connect all of our power supply cables. So first up, you can see we have our CPU cable right here. We're going to run that right through and it's going to get plugged in right up here in the top left-hand corner. Then our last power supply cable we're going to connect is our main motherboard cable. And this is going to drop down right in here so you can see where that is going to be connected. So it's just going to drop and snap in place right there. So now you can see what it looks like with both of those cables connected. Now we're ready to plug in the rest of our cables right here. So you can see we have our HD audio. That's going to go right here under this cover. We may need to remove with a Phillips head screwdriver. Then you can see we have our front panel connector. That's going to drop down right in here and get plugged in. Page 1-18 in the user guide manual is going to walk you through the correct setup for that. And I do want to point out they have this nice cover on there keeping everything together for us. Then you can see we have USB 3.0 for our front panel. That's going to go right in here. And pay attention to how this notch is lined up. It's only going to fit one way. So you can see that's our front panel connectors. And then everything else we have to connect is going to be our fans and our RGB. So here's a close-up of all the connectors right here. So in the end, I did have to undo that screw to connect the HD audio. Then you can see going further along, we have our USB 3.0 right there. Then we have our front panel connector just pushed right down in place, really nice. Main power supply. You can see over here, first up we have our 5-pin splitter for our RGB. Then you can see we have our chassis fan, which is going to have an adapter for us so we can attach both fans to this motherboard. Then you can see where our CPU fan's installed. And lastly, we have our connector right here for our CPU power from our power supply. So that's a quick close-up look of all the connections on this board. Keep in mind there's USB Type-C, if you have that connection for your build, if you're using this motherboard. And then you can see we have our USB 2.0 connection right there as well. So there we go. That's just a quick look at all the connection options on this board that we used in this build. Lastly, you can see we have our fans connected right here, and we have all of our RGB connected as well for our cooler and the 2 fans that you see here. We have plenty of extra connectors with our splitter cable now. So at this stage, we can put everything back together and boot it up. I wouldn't recommend cable managing just yet. It's always great to make sure your PC posts before you spend a lot of time tidying everything up. So let's go ahead, let's put the top back on and see if it fires up. So now it's time to see if everything will post. So let's go ahead, let's power it on. And there you go, you can see everything's booting up. It's just gonna take a minute for our monitor to activate as well with our motherboard BIOS settings. If for some reason yours is not booting up, troubleshoot by updating the BIOS first. Make sure you have the latest BIOS firmware installed. So follow that procedure and then try again, and maybe, just maybe, that'll help you out with any issues you may have with your build. I know for me, I had to go ahead and make sure the BIOS flashback was updated, and then it worked great. So make sure all your cables are connected, and then if you're still having issues, make sure that your BIOS is up to date for the 5600G. But there you go, you can see it booted just fine and everything's working great. Now let's go ahead and manage our cables. So here's a look at the final build with our cables managed. You may have noticed too, our CPU power cable now is routed behind and underneath the motherboard. Everything else is just tucked away nicely, zip tied together. Most of it I was able to get bailed out, I feel like, between the 2 fans. So everything's nice and snug under there, zip tied together. Really happy with how everything turned out with this build in regards to cable management. I wish I could make this a little bit prettier. Not sure in the future if I got like a longer extension cable, I could maybe run it that way and that might look a little bit better. And unfortunately with this board, the HD audio, there just really wasn't much I was able to work with there. And I still wanted to keep this slot open in case we ever want to add a GPU to this build. But let's go ahead, let's shine a light into. You can see how everything looks in there. Get a feel for how everything kind of came together with this build. But overall, very pleased and impressed with this case and what we were able to fit inside and how much room we still have. Now that everything's finished, there's only one thing left for us to do. So satisfying. So overall, I'm very happy with how this PC turned out. It's fantastic. I think the case really makes this PC build what it is, and I can't believe how much room we still have left in the case. We can cram a full GPU in there horizontally or vertically if we want, and I really like the nice touch of the tempered glass. In the future, the only upgrades I may make someday is add a GPU and maybe swap around the fans or add a couple more fans to get even more RGB glow in here, because we have a lot of space still and it looks really clean, and very pleased with it overall. So everything worked great. If for some reason you're having any issues in the whole build process and you're doing this exact same build, make sure, 1, that all your cables are connected properly, and 2, update your motherboard's BIOS to the latest version, and hopefully that would be your issue. For some reason the 5600G isn't getting along with your motherboard. Update the BIOS and hopefully that will resolve any of your issues. Well, that concludes our video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget the product link will be in our video description below. Please go ahead, check it out, and do your shopping from there. Any purchase made through that link helps support our channel at no additional cost to you. So we're really grateful and thankful for all of your support. While you're at it, can you go ahead and hit that like button for us? And subscribe to our channel. We have new content coming out daily, and we don't want you to miss anything. Please go ahead and give us a follow online and make it a clean sweep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. You can message us on WeChat, check out our website, and join our free newsletter. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget, new content daily, and we can't wait to see you in our next video.